Hey entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. We started the Pilothouse email and customer retention team to crush targets. And in our 4th year, we are the best customer retention team in the Roman character set. We use campaigns to fire up the addresses you spent so much money to acquire and build effective automations that keep your engagement window fat and drive value that you can amortize over years. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have, and the most effective ad funnels go to high-intent audience. Come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak with me directly. I'll give you a free audit. Back to the show.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
If you're a brand owner and your first thing that you look at every morning is your global conversion rate on Shopify, you need to stop doing that immediately. That is a very toxic metric to be tying success to. We're not looking at CRO as this isolated testing space. We're looking at it from that full customer acquisition and retention cycle. We're not running tests on Shopify or running landing page tests without really kind of digging into what's happening on the ad side or the email side or wherever the traffic is actually coming from. A lot of people will panic when they see a conversion rate start to drop. But the thing to start thinking about when a conversion rate drops is
It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilothouse email and customer retention team. If you want to make the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem, follow us on your favorite podcast app today. This time, we're visited by Evan O'Gorman. He runs our CRO team. And, we've been talking on the pod about how times like this, you want to really focus in on cutting low-cost revenue into your digital ecosystem and really tightening your bottom of funnel. And there's nothing more bottom of funnel than the cart, right? So he kind of starts from there and moves up. Great to have you here, Evan. I wonder if you can just maybe introduce yourself. What we'd love to hear is what path brought you here and where you're taking CRO at Pilothouse.
100%. It's going to be hard to follow up with that intro, but I'll do my best. I've been at Pilothouse now coming up 6 years. I've been pretty much on every side of the customer acquisition and, I wouldn't say retention, but pretty much every part of the funnel now I've been a part of. Right now, working with the team, leading up our CRO and Shopify optimization division. And it's a lot of fun getting to know how the full ecosystem works all the way from the top and now all the way to the very bottom.
So we've been in touch a little bit before this. I like to save the magic for the pod, so I don't get too far into it. Or what tends to happen is you've already said something with each other and then you don't say it again. So we've been in touch a little bit, but I've been very careful to not pull too far down any one thread. So what would be great is for you to start by talking about here at Pilothouse, just break down really high level the services and maybe platforms that you're using to help drive results for clients and how you're using them. Super high level. And then let's break it down and talk about, of course, since this is the world's best email and retention podcast, let's talk about within those services, how we deal with audience.
Would love to. Could go on all day. I would say the best way to look at it is from the perspective of the fact that at Pilothouse we're approaching things from that full funnel e-commerce optimization perspective, right? We're not looking at CRO as this isolated platform or isolated testing space. We're looking at it from that full customer acquisition and retention cycle. So by that, what I mean by that is, we're not running tests on Shopify or running landing page tests without really kind of digging into what's happening on the ad side or the email side or wherever the traffic is actually coming from. That's our first point of call for CRO, right? We're approaching CRO from that full funnel perspective. So in terms of platforms, we're looking at everything. The most important part is where that traffic's coming from and where that traffic is in its life cycle with your brand and with your products, whether those are returning customers, whether those are people on a subscription, or complete opposite side of the spectrum, whether the people who've just clicked an ad after seeing your product or hearing about your brand for the first time on an Instagram story while they were doom scrolling, whatever it might be. That's what I want to know first before we start optimizing or testing anything. At which point then we're going to look at all the different options that we can to optimize. We're going to look at whether it's a landing page flow, whether it's a funnel split test, whether it is a Shopify optimization, or whether it's a cart checkout or bundle optimization and AOV play on the Shopify store itself. In terms of what platforms we're using, could go on off all day, but what we really leaned into is not just looking at CRO from a conversion rate perspective, because at the end of the day, that's only just one metric that you can really lean on to leverage performance for your brand, right? You can, if conversion rate is the problem, sure, there's lots of tests, optimizations you can do for that. But in a lot of cases, Jordan, we see the biggest successes made in terms of AOV optimization, subscription take rate, increasing that return customer, increasing that LTV. That's where we see a lot of gains made outside of just the global conversion rate. I really hate the global conversion rate as a metric because there's just so many variables that can impact it. So what we're really trying to do is dig deep into seeing what the current user behavior is, where we need to get to, and what's actually going to incrementally drive more revenue for the brand, rather than just looking at one metric that may or may not even be within your control.
Great thing to point out. I mean, like, it's just, it's the same kind of, when we talk about the email channel, it's like, okay, there's so many things in click-through rate. You know what I mean? You really have to look at a basket of metrics. If we can pull that thread, what are some common misconceptions on, or just misunderstandings of things that are negatively affecting your conversion rate, that are maybe not under your control at all, or that you're doing the wrong thing? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, so people can understand how maybe the way they look at optimizing their website is wrong.
100%. If you're a brand owner, or you're a marketer, whatever, you're working at a brand, or whether you're at an agency, whatever, and your first thing that you look at every morning is your on-store global conversion rate on Shopify, you need to stop doing that immediately. That is a very toxic metric to be tracking and tying success to. It is. I'll give you some examples. Like we get a lot of inquiries coming into the Pilothouse side about conversion rate optimization, right? And people will say, hey, our conversion rate sucks, right? And I'll look at their Shopify store, look at their GA, and yeah, their conversion is like 0.4%, right? Which is bad. And then I'll go into I'll have a look through the site, just like put my marketing hat on, put my CRO hat on. I'll go through the site, I'll go through the flow. And like, it's not the best site in the world, but it's not a 0.4% conversion rate site, right? By any means. And then what I'll do is, at that point, if I was only looking at it from a CRO Shopify perspective, that's where I'd stop the book and be like, okay, well, let's start running these tests and see if we can increase the conversion rate. Let's start doing this thing in the cart. Let's start using these headlines, etc. But instead, what we do is we took a deep dive into where the traffic was coming from, and we broke the conversion rate down by traffic source. And we saw that, in fact, their conversion rate was actually like a 4.5% on organic and returning customer traffic, which is, within reason. But then we saw that the majority of the traffic they were sending to site was through paid social, with whoever was running their paid social. And it was all click campaigns they're running. It was all just click traffic they were sending to the site. So Facebook was sending cheap clicks to their site of people who had no intention or no track record of actually making purchases. So therefore, they were just flooding the site with all this traffic that was never going to purchase, and therefore just plummeting their conversion rate. So, if I'm a marketer and I'm looking at that, or if I'm a brand and I'm like, hey, we need to increase our conversion rate, then it's like, okay, we need to increase your conversion rate, then stop sending traffic to your site. That's the best way to increase your conversion rate, is just stop sending traffic to your site. And then you only get return customer traffic. You're not going to scale brand doing that, though. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is that your conversion rate isn't always a reflection of the conversion intent on your site. It's often a reflection of the traffic that's being sent to your site, and who's being sent to your site, and what part of your site or what part of your funnel they're experiencing when they get there. Because the other part of it too, which I'm sure we can potentially segue now into more retention conversation, how that ties into it, is if you're sending people who are return customers, who are familiar with your brand, who are already like a warm audience, are already coming there with intent, you want to make sure you're satisfying that intent and making that purchase or that transaction as easy as possible for them. You're not necessarily trying to educate them on what the product is. You're not trying to educate them on who you are. They already know who you are. So you start sending those people to like a home page or an About Us page or whatever, you're not going to scale that as well. Versus if you're sending that top of funnel paid social traffic to your site, you don't want to be pushing them down into like a preloaded cart, for example, because they don't even know what the product is yet.
Well, the really important thing from all that is, like, you obviously have to look at the whole thing traffic segmented. You can't just do your site conversion. You've got to do your conversion based on, if you do channel and you assume intent by channel, you can just do channel. But really, even if we look inside of, Meta, you've got like prospecting campaigns and you got retargeting campaigns. Those retargeting campaigns should be converting, and those prospecting campaigns should be shopping, right? So, yeah, interesting. Is there a way that you would recommend somebody kind of just really quickly make sense of that and maybe break that down in their own digital ecosystem? Because we got people at home who are trying to fix big problems.
Yeah, 100%. I would stop looking at your global conversion rate. You go into Shopify, you go into analytics, or you go into GA, and you're just looking at your conversion rate. That's not going to tell you anything. It's honestly a pretty useless metric in the grand scheme of things. What I would be doing is I'd be looking at it from traffic source, be looking at platform, and I'd be trying to see as well like what your actual time to purchase looks like of your product, right? Maybe you have a very, very high ticket item that requires a lot of education. It's going to require a lot of like retargeting, retention, remarketing, etc. You're not going to be too concerned then about your, top of funnel 1 day click conversion rate, right? What you're going to be trying to do is maybe build those retargeting audiences and really capitalize on the conversion rate in the retargeting audiences, or maybe you're trying to, build a list and hit them up with the list, try to get them on like an abandoned cart or a flow like that. But yeah, you don't want to be trying to optimize around your global conversion rate. It's completely useless. And the other part too is like, let's say for example you're running paid social, or maybe it's retention as well, right? And you're looking at that traffic. And a lot of people will panic when they see a conversion rate start to drop, right? But the thing you have to start thinking about when a conversion rate drops is, are you flatlining in terms of your sessions and in terms of your traffic? Are you going down or are you going up? Because if you're flatlining or going down, your conversion rate starts to drop. There could be a number of reasons why that is, seasonality, business cycle, algorithm, whatever, right? Could be a product market fit, could be a lot of things. If your sessions are going up, and your sessions are going up at a ratio that exceeds the amount your conversion rate goes down, that's not always a bad thing that the conversion rate's going down. Because you're actually going to you're acquiring a lot more new customers because you're driving a lot more of those people to your site. Even though your conversion rate might start to go down a little bit because you are increasing the amount of traffic and the amount of volume coming to your site, you are still acquiring more customers. You're still driving more revenue than you were before. I see that all the time. Brands will
I have to
because their
explain
conversion
this.
rate goes down.
I have to explain this to our clients all the time because this is what happens. They come and what they see is, hey, look, our click through rate has dropped. What's the cause of this? And I have to go, no, yeah, but look, your clicks are up. And so what are we doing? We start capturing large audience. We're going to try to go back to someone who, bought 2 years ago and get them to buy again. So that is a harder click to get, but clicks are up. And I mean, I might argue like, as long as clicks are up and click-through rate is like in a place where it doesn't look like you're damaging your sending reputation, then hey, click +1 is a win. Maybe different, for different platforms. But if I see the clicks go up, I'm happy. Another thing I'll pull on quickly is your time to purchase, because what we think about often in email and customer retention is time to repurchase. Right? And making that repeat purchase happen as quickly as possible. And so our user is known. It's like this is, it's joe@gmail.com, right? So we know explicitly that time to purchase is your time to repurchase. Is your time to purchase that you generally look at based on like a cookie or device fingerprint kind of situation that you might have with other platforms like Meta and Google? What's happening with that time to purchase and that number? Because it's an important number.
Yeah, it's going to vary so much on like industry and vertical and like your the price point. Typically, it's like what I try to, just to keep it very simple, what I try to look at is whether this is a product that people are going to impulse buy at top of funnel, or whether it's something that people need to like think about, make a decision about, right? Like if you're a high-end premium cookware brand and you're selling, a bundle of products, like a full kitchenware set that's like $3,000, the chances of somebody, impulse buying that at a top of funnel story ad that they saw in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday, you'll get some of them for sure, but it's unlikely they're going to do that. So what I like to try to do is really try to optimize getting people in, getting them educated at that point. And then, when we're talking time to purchase, that's when you're kind of looking at like, okay, well, when are we going to start hitting people with like a retargeting ad? Like, are we going to start retargeting them immediately? Look a little bit into the ad space right now, but I guess what I like to do is just from a CRO perspective, and I really hate the term CRO because it makes people only think of conversion rate. But what I think about it from a CRO perspective is when we do come around to retargeting those people, what information have they already received? And then not trying to like necessarily put them on the exact same funnel they're already on because they already got that information, but how do we remind them of the information they've already received, they've already digested, and how do we put them on that next stage of that purchase decision?
And are you doing that with destination URL, or are you maybe changing the URL based on UTMs in the link? How does that actually happen?
Yeah, a bit of both. And again, it varies. And I would always recommend split testing it too. Like sometimes it will surprise you, follow the data and whatnot. But yeah, what I'll try to do is whether it's like the, as simple as like the URLs in the ads or like, the emails or wherever it might be, the traffic might be coming from. Just thinking about like, who are you sending this email to? Who are you hitting with this ad? Is this person already been on your site and they've already looked through, they've already seen the product, they already know how much it is. And if they're already clicking at that point, they know how much it is, because that's always going to be the biggest barrier to entry at the end of the day. If they already know how much it is, then you don't want to be trying to justify the price to them because they already know how much it is, right? What you want to be trying to do is sell them the reason why this will be a solution to what it is they're already thinking about, because that's why they're back.
And I mean, are we like down to brass tacks? You're talking about like, altering the headline and the subhead to make sure that you're getting the right kind of idea in their mind as they hit the page. Is that what
Yeah.
you're doing?
Yeah. Or even just like, you don't have to like, do necessarily big alterations or big like, convoluted A/B tests, but like just thinking about where in the acquisition funnel they're going to land when they click the ad or click the email, right? Like if they've already seen it, I'm not going to send somebody in a retargeting campaign to my homepage, right? Or my, education landing page or something like that. I'm going to send them probably to the, to the product page. You can test it for sure, but just trying to think, like taking a step back and thinking about like, it's like you go to a restaurant and people are like, "Oh, have you dined with us before?" Like that's the pre-qualification if you're a return or not, right? Because if you come in and they're like, "Oh, have you dined with us before?" and you say yes, they're not going to give you the whole spiel about how everything works because they assume that that's why you said yes. It's just the same kind of logic, right? There's a lot of tactical ways you can do it, which are going to depend on a lot of different variables, but just trying to like take a step back, not overcomplicate it, and just think about the information you're telling somebody that you're trying to sell them on. Or if you were a salesperson, you're not gonna if you're like on the if you're the third meeting you've had with somebody, you're selling them a car, you're not gonna try to introduce them to like what the brand Honda is. They already know what Honda is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, look, to borrow a well-used phrase there, you don't try to sell someone one car, you try to sell them 5 cars, right? Car after car. So let me drag into this a couple of retention thoughts, right? And this one, I earlier in our discussion, we were talking about how the conversion rate can be wrong, and what I thought to myself is, yeah, what if I was trying to build a long-term relationship? We try to build our target's like a 2 to 3 year relationship. That's what we want to build with an address, right? Which requires a whole lot of technical stuff, and it also requires a good message and adding value and having someone, like not think, why is my inbox stuffed with this crap? So I thought, well, hey, if I was trying to build that relationship, I would be doing something like, adding blog or generally just rich content videos like, hey, my YouTube videos, let's get some of those videos on my site, how to, all those kinds of things, right? Kind of if you're a supplement brand, just some health advice, whatever it is. That's what I want to be adding to support that relationship and have someone land. And when they land, it triggers, it triggers our like site abandon, browser abandon, whatever. It also triggers the retargeting ads, right? So I pull someone back from 2 years and suddenly they're in everybody's party. And if I added that blog, it would definitely crush the conversion rate. Right? It would just drive it down because suddenly you're building a relationship. And if you're trying to sell someone 5 cars, not 1 car, not every touch point is going to be, all right, sign on the dotted line right now, please. That's not what every touch point is. Some touch points might be, hey, it's time to get your brakes checked, right? Oh yeah, he's really thinking about me, right? So a little thought there on some things that we do. And additionally, there is a mirror here. I'll share with the audience. You're talking about this kind of this intent funnel based on essentially, one, probably just whether they're not interacted before, on that cookie session is probably the simplest. But, basically how far they get down the funnel. And we have the same thing: site abandon, browse abandon, cart abandon, checkout abandon. And we treat those emails as landing pages on the website that just load in email, right? We make them shoppable landing pages. They've got recommendations and stuff like that. And so I would think, I'll just say that a good effort for anybody out there who, you've got, you're at home, you're trying to make it work. A lot of our audience are just trying to make it work. Keep in mind that these 2 funnels can be put together. right? I mean, we should be thinking about the same destinations with our conversion funnel support as we're thinking about with our ads kind of, intent funnel, right?
Yeah, and then the other part as well is like if you're thinking about that retention traffic, right? These are probably going to be what like return customers, right? Like they've already been sold on the brand, they've already been sold on the product. Not only that, but they've shown the intent of clicking that email to come back and buy again or resubscribe, whatever it might be. I think at that point, that's when you need to like send those people down roads or down paths where you're not trying to optimize to get them to convert necessarily. I mean, you obviously don't want to make them not convert, but that shouldn't necessarily be your priority. Like they're already sold on it to the point that they've already bought it in the past. At that point, in my mind, if they're already putting that effort in, they've already done that thought process, there's such a warm lead. They're almost like your Amazon kind of traffic, right? Whereas like people are showing up with a credit card in their hand. At that point, what I would be trying to do is see like, okay, well, if we've already gotten past the point of trying to sell them on this, how do we potentially sell them for more? Like, how do we get more out of this purchase, right? And that's where I start trying to optimize like my AOV or like an EPC or something like that. And that's when I'll start looking at my bundling, my cross-selling, my upselling, my subscriptions, in cart, in checkout, even post-purchase, right? That's when you can really start driving a lot of that incremental revenue growth, which again has honestly literally nothing to do with your conversion rate to an extent. And the tactics you deploy, again, you're not trying to necessarily get people to make a decision to buy. You're trying to get people to buy more things when they come back.
Yeah, throwing some numbers around. About 2/3, maybe 60%, 2/3 of the Klaviyo attributed revenue that we see from our large scaling or multi-channel clients. So it's like, it's not just this is not some weird number from stuff, way down the long tail. From our big clients, 6%, maybe 2/3 of the revenue we see, sometimes a bit higher, is buyer revenue, which means it's repeat revenue. So a huge amount for us of what Klaviyo is doing is buyers. And part of that is our strategy is this long reach back, building that relationship over time. And of course, the other third is stuff that just came in the top of the funnel. We don't find that sending a ton of emails to prospects that didn't buy in the first month is very lucrative. It does end up being, 5-10% of your buyers every month, which is, I don't want to walk away from 5-10% of your revenue, but it's certainly not where all the action is. So we are driving tons of buyer traffic. That's what our marketers focus on to the site. And how would you go about informing other products and things running on the site? Oh, this is buyer. Are we going to use parameters, UTMs? Is Shopify going to know that it was a buyer because Shopify is tracking that person? How do we do that so that we can create the right experience for someone once they're there?
I'd say my favorite integration right now, or my favorite like tactic, like if we're just talking brass tacks, particularly from like a retention audience perspective, is going to be leaning on the. I mean, there's a lot of different ones, but the one that we lean on the most is like that Klaviyo Rebuy integration, where it's able to like recognize and identify the different audience segments that are coming through onto the site. And then you're able to, on the back end of Rebuy, build those data sources and build those product suggestions, recommendations, and you can get into the real detail, right? Like you can break it down by like the size of their cart, what they've purchased before, how much money they've spent before, product recommendations by the different products, by collection. It's almost kind of infinite in terms of what you can do. And what's nice about that is that like you can make sure that the products that you're trying to recommend to people, or like those upsells and cross sells you're trying to recommend to people, are relevant and appropriate, not just from like a product complementary perspective, if you have the catalog to justify that, but from a like just price point perspective as well. Like what I don't want to see is when I've got a product in my cart or I'm looking at a PDP of a product, and then the first thing that's recommended, like let's say I'm looking at something that's like $60, and then it's trying to upsell me on something that's like 1,500. You know what I mean? Like people who are there browsing at a $60 product, chances are they're probably not going to get upsold on a 1,500 thing. Maybe with a repeat purchaser, who knows, depends. But what I will try to do is like incrementally increase that AOV and give them incentives to do that. Maybe the incentive is like a free shipping threshold. Maybe the incentive is a free gift, rewards and loyalty, something like that. Just ways in which you can like upsell or cross sell or bundle things to people where it will make sense both from a product perspective, but also like from a financial perspective too. I would say that's like what I would lean on the most in those cases.
Yeah, so so I guess, for the entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers at home, if you are kind of if you've been listening to the world's best email retention podcast and you have adjusted your traffic to be buyer focused, first thing, segment your list by prospects and buyers, and then really work on the different windows that we've discussed, your campaign window, your flow window, and you're pushing more buyer traffic because that's where the money is, then you also have to adjust, it sounds like, of course, your on-site tools to accommodate that traffic. And maybe we're going to explicitly, for specific reasons, like our site abandon is, we kind of redo the welcome content on our site abandon. They're largely the same because that's a bounce. Somebody bounced and they're getting this email. So maybe we'd explicitly drive someone to a more higher level page, or maybe we would just let the tool take care of it. What would you do?
If they had bounced and not purchased before,
Well, they might have purchased and they might not, but this is another point. Our general abandonment, we sell burger and fries. It's a deluxe burger and fries, but we just get people up making money quick, and then we optimize from there. So our default site abandon would not differentiate between buyer and prospect. The traffic would be buyer or prospect, though. So what would you want to do? Would you want the email marketer to split that up by buyer and prospect, or would you be able to figure it out just from the traffic that hits your tool?
ideally it's going to be split out because I would like to try to create a unique experience depending on the person's experience, like previous experience with the brand. But honestly, I think with the way a lot of these tools like your Rebuys, I'm sure Klaviyo as well, are leaning into like AI, machine learning and whatnot, it's almost kind of able to identify that for you in a lot of cases, or at least it's able to optimize
The
kind of in
product.
real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's able to recommend products that if it doesn't know, it's going to look at, well, what are the most purchases made by people that we don't know who they are. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a kind of a good safety net, but I would prioritize really trying to create those unique experiences and personalizations for the people depending on what they've experienced to date.
Yeah. So, I mean, to use a Pilothouse specific example, of course, the entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers at home, sometimes they're doing their own thing, but okay, we're going to build our default flows, which are not life cycle specific. And then when that's done and we know they're working and we start breaking things out, I mean, you don't do a waterfall and build 100 emails and then find out if they work. You build 10, then you build 20, then you build 30. So as we start breaking that up, you then need to go, oh, we're not just going to break this up here by buyer. We're going to break our site up by buyer. And to really drive home the importance, in my mind, for the audience, it's like very common for a brand that isn't even a huge retention brand. Your email retention team is 20% of the business, 40% of the profit, because you're not paying on all the ads. And if you are a retention brand, remember we went through 4 different categories: acquisition, balanced, retention, and product subscribe. If you are a retention brand, recall that after 6 quarters, a dollar spent drove an extra 60 cents after 6 quarters for this retention brand. It's a huge part of your business. So as you realign your business towards retention, it is critical that you do not only think about your email program. The thing to drive home, and the reason I did this pod is email is, sorry for the term CRO, Evan hates it. Email is CRO, on-site is CRO. All these things that happen, after someone's aware of your brand, all have to work together. And again, what's at risk is up to half of your profit, not your revenue, because your revenue's coming from all this ad spend, but it's very expensive. What's at risk here is half of your profit if you don't get your bottom of funnel set up correctly.
100%. And it's like the way I look at it too is, as you said, everything is CRO, right? Like from the first touch point a customer ever has with your brand, all the way to their 8th purchase through an email, like 2 years later. That entire part of it is a conversion rate optimization. Like you're able to optimize the conversion rate at each of those points, and not just conversion rate, AOV, LTV, everything. If you could have the best, and feel free to challenge me on this, but you could have the best Shopify store, the best experience that's ever been seen in the history of e-commerce. It could just be like the most CRO dialed thing in the world. But if your traffic acquisition, whether it's retention, whether it's top of funnel, whatever it is, isn't dialed, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good it is. It's like the analogy I always use. You put a Michelin star in a really low income area in a city, and people are going to come in and get a beer and probably leave. And you're probably going to go out of business because you spent so much making this place perfect, making the food perfect, getting all the best chefs in town in
Yeah,
there,
we
right?
spared no expense, right?
Exactly. Vice versa, you could have the best email retentions flow campaigns, best marketers in the business. You could have the best paid social traffic acquisition teams. You know, the best in the business at it. But if you're sending them to a Shopify store, whatever it might be, that is just really poorly optimized and creates a really bad experience, then again, it doesn't matter. You're going to be sending this perfect, this fantastic quality traffic to a dump that they're not going to convert on. And there's, you know, at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do, and then you're passing those people into the abyss. So trying to make sure that you're looking at everything and giving attention to everything and looking at it as one overall user experience, it's like it's that or bust. I'm
So
afraid.
we're 32 minutes in or something like that, and sadly, this was the intro discussion that should have been there. We went so far down the weeds
Yeah,
just
we
to
went
get
deep.
back to the real kernel of it, which is, I think your second example, that's what I see a lot is, people come, Pilot House is a customer acquisition company at heart. We're there to support those channels, to help grow brands. Brands need to move units. To move units, they need mass market advertising, right? So that's what we're here for. But what I see often is, people will sign up and start doing advertising. And afterwards, it's like, oh, we got all these customers in here. We got to reactivate them. They'll start doing email. But already you've got that leaky bucket that so much has spilled out of the holes in the leaky bucket. Whereas brands that do set up their email first, their email and their SMS, that whole thing is dialed, and you squeeze the rag of every single address that comes in. And all you need to do is spend a month or two getting things ready. Then you can spend on the ads. Okay, we're still going to optimize that, but let's just get this thing dialed before we start spending, like, hey, we're going to spend 500,000 on ads this year, and we're not even going to drop money to get our email working correctly. And my assumption is the same thing happens with brands. They have a leaky bucket. They don't get the site optimized so it's converting perfectly or as close to perfectly as possible, and they just start spending on ads. So, I mean, is that kind of the uphill battle you face as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, I see it all the time, and like it's not, you know, they complement each other too outside of just growing and scaling your brand, right? Like let's say for example you've got an AOV of $30, right, or like your product is $30, and let's just talk about. I mean, you can probably you can pull it in because you know more about the retention side than I do, but let's just talk about like a paid social, for example. If you got a product of $30 and you're trying to be profitable, like your CPA target is going to be so low that trying to scale that paid social is going to be incredibly challenging, right? For any best media buyer in the world is going to have a real hard time trying to scale a product where your CPA is probably going to be like what, $15 on that, just as an example. You optimize, you get something like Rebuy in there, right? And you're able to optimize that AOV in 30 days, and you're able to bring that up by like even $5, $10, and all of a sudden it's 35, $40 AOV, right? Or maybe it's a subscription product and you're able to increase that subscription first time subscription take rate. Then all of a sudden what that allows you to do, because your LTV is going to be much higher then, right? All of a sudden what that allows you to do is, as a, you know, on the paid social side, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the retention side, you're able to spend into a way higher CPA target, knowing that your LTV and AOV are actually going to justify the cost of acquiring that customer down the line, right? And that's something again that I'll see a lot of brands, a lot of marketers, they'll look at that CPA target, and that's just the be all and end all. And they'll look at that and they'll look at their global conversion rate. And firstly, how do those two things relate? I don't know, but you know, there's just so many more ways you can optimize different parts of your funnel that will actually support the growth of the other parts as well. And yeah, curious to get your thoughts on the retention side of that.
So first of all, if the audience here, like, great discussion. If the audience here goes back, I don't know, I don't have the episode number, but if you go back on the World's Best Email Retention podcast, you'll see where I broke this down with a spreadsheet. And the thing is, it wasn't increasing the AOV; it was increasing the kind of the repeat purchase rate. But same deal, increasing the how much you're making from an address or from a customer without incrementally increasing the advertising spend. And so I broke it down. You can go check it out. And the math the same, which is like, to succeed in this case, with this $30 AOV that we're talking about, to succeed, you actually succeed in the bottom of the funnel. And I will just extend that thought to my career. In my career, I've worked at some startups to exit. I've seen, companies do mass market advertising, build a total addressable market. That's the sexy stuff, right? That's like, oh, we're a brand and we're gonna introduce ourselves to the world, and we're gonna have people dancing in Patagonia. You know what I mean? In like a suit. It's gonna be an awesome ad. Meanwhile, you know what? My whole career, like the retention team, we're the ones under the engine, right? We're the ones that are like, okay, we got to make this thing make money. Although people are paying so much money for those sexy ads, we got to make this thing profit. And so it's not usually in my career that I've seen you've got a retention team and like a CRO team together. Although let me say that the market is changing. We are going to see a world where there are just kind of tight margins, and these kinds of what you want to have is a team. And by the way, everybody feel free to come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form to have a team that's focused on margin. We're the margin improvement team. You've got a sexy team telling the whole world about that, right? But then the unsung heroes, right, are under the engine, changing the oil and making sure this thing makes money. So that's my comment on that. Bottom line, yes, 100%. 100%. That's exactly how it works in my opinion. Well, we are 40 minutes in almost. Maybe we should call it there. Love to have you back on the show again sometime if you got something to tell the world.
Yeah, would love to. Would love to maybe maybe take an example of something that we can do, or something that we've seen success on, like cross between retention and CRO, and where we've been able to kind of complement a funnel with those two channels specifically.
That'd be really cool. This was a good intro conversation to get my audience thinking about this properly.
Primed.
Maybe go to a client where we've got an AE who's plugged in and has kind of worked with the marketers and such to get this thing really dialed. I would love to take a live example of that to the audience.
100%. Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. It was wonderful bringing to you Evan and his CRO team. Again, if you are interested, and you better be interested, because we just told you that for most companies, no one knows it, but success or failure is based on these unsung heroes under the car, making it profitable, right? So if you're not thinking about this, you might have real problems. Feel free to come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form. Of course, you can speak with me if you have any questions on email. And other than that, hey, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey, entrepreneurs and spammers. Remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.